So I just felt like hopping on here tonight for a little while. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I got some crime stories pulled up that I want to share. And one super, now this dumb criminal tonight, I don't know whether to call them a dumb criminal or smart criminal, or maybe they just really are reformed. I'm not sure. That could go either way. So I can't wait to get to that with you. But before I get into any of that, well, I put a little silent video up the other day, and it was about Summer Wells's Amber Alert, because y'all know I stay on that. I check every day, several times a day, for her Amber Alert, because I always felt like whenever her Amber Alert disappeared off the missingkids.org site, then we would see movement in her case like real soon after that. Well, I went on there the other day and it said no active Amber Alerts. And I'm like, hmm. So I kept reloading the page. I loaded it up on two other devices just to make sure, because it kind of happened once before to where Summer's Amber Alert wasn't there, and to where she wasn't listed on um, NCMEC at all. Like you couldn't search and find her. But it turned out to be a website glitch. So I tried it on several devices just to make sure it wasn't a website glitch or whatever. Came back and tried it again later on just to be doubly sure, thoroughly sure. Well, her Amber Alert is indeed gone from the NCMEC page, and but it is still up on the TBI's webpage. Now, I actually called the TBI to find out what was going on, if something had changed or whatever, and that's how I found out that it's still active on the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation site. Because she actually, while I was on the phone with her, she was like, "Hold on, let me pull it up real quick and make sure it was." I thought it was there, and so my heart kind of skipped a beat for a minute, because when she first said that, right after that, she was like, "Oh wow, well it usually just pops right up." So my heart kind of got the beating, like, "Oh my God, it's gone from TBI too." And then she was like, "Oh no, there it is. Page is just loading slow." So and Summer's Amber Alert is still active. It's just not on the national page anymore. I don't really know how to feel about that, because Summer Wells's case is what really brought me into the true crime community on YouTube. You know, um, before all the drama really got deep and heavy in her case, all the YouTube drama, her case is what drew me in, because it was kind of at the beginning of the drama, and it was like everybody was starting to come up with these crazy theories and weird he said, she said, I saw, but I didn't see, but I think I saw type crap that goes on in Summer's case. Well, I eventually stopped really even covering her case, because it got to be such a circus, so just hectic. And now I really only post just like straight factual stuff, straight from TBI, FBI, whoever put something out, if the news center put something out. And I even have people disliking my Summer Wells videos. They disliked the Summer Wells video that I posted, which was absolutely nothing other than some text that said something like, straight from the TBI, the truth according to the TBI, or something like that. And it was when Leslie Earhart, a few months back, I think in December, when they did that pre-Christmas update. That's all it was. And somebody actually disliked that video. Like, how can you dislike the truth? Like, this is not me saying something. It's not me telling you blah blah blah. This is actually the TBI's public information officer. So I don't know. It's crazy. But yeah, I don't know how to feel about that, because, like I said, I was really hoping that the day that her Amber Alert was no longer on the NCMEC site was the day that we were going to find out something about this case. And it turns out not to be what it is. So I'm kind of let down, kind of just, bleh, you know. Um, I really had some high expectations for that, and it doesn't seem to be playing out well. My one prediction did come true. I was pretty sure that once the time rolled around for the reward fund to be an issue again, there was going to be something twisted about it, and indeed it is. Y'all remember that, and I don't care what y'all say about Don Wells, whether you believe he's guilty or not guilty or whatever. I'm not even gonna throw my opinion out there. One thing he did for Summer was, y'all remember when the reward fund was originally posted, they said that after 6 months, if Summer wasn't found or the reward wasn't like claimed, then that money would end up going to like some child advocacy center or child foundation. Um, and Don started making a lot of noise to where we need this fund to stay there. We need it there. We need this reward to stay up. And they eventually changed it and said, well, we'll extend it on out until the 1 year mark and then we'll reevaluate it at that time. So I feel like if he didn't do anything else for Summer, he did that. He made sure that the reward fund stayed up there. Um, but I kind of knew that once it came time for the reevaluation and all that, that there was going to be some kind of something that happened, and of course it has, because apparently Tim Coop, the Captain Tim Coop at the Churchill Rescue Squad, has had to make a statement addressing people's concerns about the status of the reward fund, the dollar amount, this, that, and the other thing. And he basically made a non-statement, the kind your attorney writes for you, like, all I'm going to say is, and that's it. And so he says basically that the reward fund is going to be turned over to the courts, and the courts will decide the ultimate resolution to the matter as far as what is done with the money. Um, Nobody wants to speak about exact dollar amounts that are in there, but hey, I'm not even fixing to dig into that pot. I really just wanted to say how kind of let down I am that Summer's Amber Alert is now not like on the national page, and there's no information. It just kind of quietly faded away off the website. Like, wow. And not many people are addressing it. Like, I saw one major creator that came out a day or two after I did that video, and they were basically saying that the Amber Alert thing was a rumor and whatever, but it's true. It's gone. So I don't know. Um, 1 second, guys. Good night, silly goose. Close the door all the way. So I just had a G baby moment. She just needed to come and talk to her Gigi for a minute. I love that girl. She's so sweet. Um, but yeah, that's really all I wanted to say about Summer. I didn't really want to go into anything deeper than that because I don't, at this point in her case, as far as social media and YouTube is concerned, it's hard to address anything about her case without having to address the drama. And I'm just not going to do that. I think all of that foolishness is so disrespectful to Summer and so detrimental to her case. But yeah, so this first story I want to share with you. I'm going to share it because I really couldn't. I read the article like two or three times and I really couldn't understand why people are being charged in this because, well, let's go through the article and then I'll say why because. All right. Former University of Missouri frat members charged in hazing incident that left student blind and paralyzed. Two former members of a University of Missouri fraternity have been indicted for a hazing incident that left another student blind and unable to walk or communicate after drinking a liter of vodka. A Boone County grand jury on Friday indicted former Phi Gamma Delta fraternity members Ryan Delante and Thomas Schultz, both of St. Louis County, in the hazing of Danny Santulli, 19, of Eden Prairie, Minnesota, and the Columbia Missourian reported. Both were charged with felony hazing and misdemeanors of supplying liquor to a minor or intoxicated person. Schultz also faces a felony for tampering with physical evidence in a felony prosecution. Santulli was pledging the fraternity in October when he was found unresponsive due to alcohol poisoning. Authorities said his blood alcohol content was 0.0486, six times the legal limit. Another member of the fraternity, Alec Wetzler, was charged earlier in June with misdemeanor counts of supplying alcohol to a minor and possession of alcohol by a minor. In May, Santulli's family settled with nearly 2 dozen defendants in a civil lawsuit. According to the lawsuit filed by Miami-based attorney David Bianchi, Santulli eventually lost consciousness before a member of the fraternity drove him to a nearby hospital. There, emergency staff restarted his heart and put him on a ventilator. While Santulli has since woken up from a coma, Bianchi said the teenager is still unable to speak. For some reason, these things always seem to happen to the best kids, Bianchi said. I don't understand why. He was a wonderful young man. The charges came just a day after three former fraternity members were sentenced to jail terms for their roles in the hazing death of Bowling Green State University student. Now, here's why I'm not understanding the charges, and I wanted to share this. Like, I understand some of the charges. There's the supplying liquor to a minor and or intoxicated person, right? And then tampering with evidence. So that makes sense. You know, maybe and the tampering with evidence, I would assume they tried to like hide receipts or delete text messages or something like that. Okay. The misdemeanors for supplying alcohol and possession of alcohol, that I understand. That makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the felony hazing charges because nothing in the article, and it could just be this particular article didn't mention it, nothing in the article says that he drank this liter of vodka as a part of some type of pledge ritual where they had like a drinking contest or something. It doesn't say that he was forced to drink it, that he was tricked into drinking it. It just says that he drank a liter of vodka. So that could just be him at a party drinking. So I feel like there's information left out of the article, but I did kind of want to share that with you only because there's that question on the table for me, and I could just be misunderstanding, or maybe it just wasn't reported in detail in this article. Anyway, on to the next one. But I do hope that that young man will regain his ability to speak and walk, because it would be really sad for him to just fully lose uh, such capacity at such a young age, when he's in the prime of life and really just starting out his life. Okay, let me take this out. So the next story makes a little more sense to me. And so we jump from Missouri on over to Mississippi. Ex-paramedic sentenced for sexual assaults in ambulances. A former Mississippi paramedic has been sentenced to 40 years in prison without parole for sexually assaulting patients in ambulances on the way to the hospital. This one, I'm sharing because it's not the first story that I've read like this. There have been several others, and I read about another one recently, but I can't really recall the details of it, so I wasn't able to pull it up for comparison. But there was another very similar story recently where a couple of months back, a paramedic was arrested, tried, and convicted for sexually assaulting patients in the back of the ambulance. So this one I just wanted to kind of put out there while it was fresh on my mind. It says a former Mississippi paramedic has been sentenced to 40 years in prison without parole, weeks after he pleaded guilty to sexually assaulting patients in ambulances as they were being taken to hospitals. James Lavelle Wiley, 57, of Leakesville, apologized to his victims during his sentencing hearing Monday, said the Sun Herald reported. I'm asking you, begging you to forgive me, Wiley said as the women and some of their relatives cried in the courtroom. Circuit Judge Robert Krebs said he was not swayed by Wiley's apologies. I'm glad for that. He should be in his late 90s before he'd ever be eligible to get out, District Attorney Angel Myers McIlrath said Monday. Wiley pleaded guilty May 9th to 3 counts of sexual battery and 2 counts of touching a child for lustful purposes. So he was messing with kids too. I want to say so much right now. McIlrath and Wiley committed the crimes. Said Wiley committed the crimes between 2016 and 2019 while working as a certified paramedic for ASAP Ambulance. The company serves patients in Alabama and Mississippi, and it fired him. Each time the assaults occurred in an ambulance, Wiley was in the back. The ambulance drivers did nothing to intervene, and they denied knowledge of the attacks, court records showed. Something to say about that, too. Krebs on Monday told the victims he was sorry they had faced doubt from some law enforcement officers or others in the criminal justice system. My apologies that you weren't believed, the judge said. Wiley had no criminal history before his arrest, but I bet you he got a long history of doing that. And I bet you if they check other places that he's worked in other capacities, or even as a paramedic, they're going to find more victims. In each criminal case, victims are described as vulnerable because they had a medical condition that required emergency care when Wiley attacked them. McIlrath said Wiley raped a pregnant patient in the ambulance in 2018 as she was being taken to the hospital, and the woman had a miscarriage hours later. My God. More details were revealed in civil lawsuits filed on behalf of at least adults who said Wiley assaulted them during emergency trips to South Mississippi hospitals. The civil cases have been settled and dismissed. It's crazy that he felt like he could get away with this, and it also makes me doubt the statements of other drivers who say that they didn't see anything and they didn't know anything about it, because every ambulance that I've ever been in, even back to when I was a kid, had a window between the driver's cabin and the back where the patient would be. Sometimes there's more than one worker in the back, and there's only one person up in front, and that's the driver. Also, you can hear between that partition because I know that the few times I've been in an ambulance, I could clearly hear the driver speaking, like their actual voice speaking when they were like talking on the radio or whatever, or and in some cases calling back to the patient area to the other paramedic. I could clearly hear the radios going off in the front or whatever. I've seen paramedics communicate, the person in the back and the person in the front communicating back and forth without using radios. They're just talking directly to each other. It's kind of noisy and it gets a little hard to hear for the untrained ear, but it would be easy. You know, you get used to hearing certain sounds. Just like when I listen to police scanner radios or whatever, I have a hard time hearing it. I have to actively listen. But people who use those type of radios on a regular basis get used to the background noise and the distortion, the way it sounds or whatever, and so they can hear clearly what's being said. The fact that he raped a pregnant woman and caused her to have a miscarriage. I mean, the fact that he could feel so protected or untouchable that he could do these type of things on a consistent basis to patients who were at one of the most vulnerable and low points of their life makes me say that others had to be aware and be complicit, because there's just no way. There's no way that he could possibly feel like it's okay for me to do this, knowing that there's a risk of the person telling the doctors at the hospital or telling someone that they had been touched or assaulted, unless he felt for sure that he had backup to say nothing happened. If you follow what I'm saying, he did this because he felt like he knew his coworkers would be his backup. And then who are the authorities likely to believe? A patient, one patient, or these two professionals saying no, nothing like that happened? So that's a really horrible case, and it's something. This type of abuse in medical settings is nothing new, and it's nothing that it seems like nothing that people really want to do anything about, as far as the people who are in charge of making laws or whatever. Because you remember last year there was a story of a woman who was in a care home who had been in a coma for years, who gave birth. And it seems that no one in the facility who was caring for her even realized she was pregnant until she was having the baby. Like, it didn't cross their mind that, oh, suddenly she's not having a monthly cycle, or she's gaining weight, or she's getting round in the middle, or her stomach's moving by itself, or whatever. And it turns out that a male nurse there had been assaulting her on a regular basis. So it's nothing new, these types of cases, but it's always disturbing every time that you hear about it, because many times people who are in a situation to need medical care aren't in a position to be on the lookout for themselves or to defend themselves in any type of way, or even to be aware of what's happening to them. You know, how many people he did this to, some and got caught because they were aware of what happened. How many victims don't know that they were victimized? So, yeah, it's crazy. 40 years is a long sentence, especially when it's without probation. So I'm glad that they sentenced him that way. But at the same time, it seems like 40 years just isn't really enough, because he's caused damage that in some cases won't heal. Alrighty. Gunman kills 3 seniors over a potluck dinner in Alabama church. So I'm bringing up this story because I brought you the original story of the shooting at the church. And at that time, there were 2 dead and I think several injured. Then the count went up to 3 because one of the injured victims ended up succumbing to their wounds. Well, this story recently came out, and it kind of gives some clarity to what went on and what led up to that going on. And the story is kind of wild. You know, especially that this guy chose to do what he did because it kind of really didn't even make sense for him to go shoot up a church. Like, not kind of, but it absolutely didn't make sense for him to go shoot up a church. Maybe, I mean, not that any of this ever makes sense, but it's kind of like I say with homicides. Like, if an adult murders another adult, then we can find some kind of logic in it or in their thinking that led up to their actions because 9 times out of 10, there was some harsh feelings there caused by something that you can point to. That person slept with my spouse. That person stole from me. That person caused me some type of injury, hurt, or harm. And so I killed them. But when it's a child, it doesn't make sense because what could a child possibly do to won't make you kill them? And in this case, it's kind of like that. If he had, there were several other ways that this story could have played out to where if he had shot up certain places or certain people, it would have been somewhat logical. But the fact that he chose to shoot up this church makes absolutely no sense. Like it doesn't fit the it's like a piece from an entirely different puzzle. So here we go. And y'all see apparently he did not get away unscathed. Vestavia Hills, Alabama, the 70-year-old visitor had previously attended some services at the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church before police say he showed up for a potluck dinner, pulled out a handgun, and fatally shot 3 of the elderly participants, one of whom died in his wife's arms as she whispered words of love in his ear. The church members were spared further violence Thursday evening when one of them rushed the gunman, struck him with a chair, and held him until police arrived. The suspect, Robert Finlay Smith, was charged with capital murder Friday. The baffling violence in the wealthy suburb of Birmingham stunned a community known for its family-centered lifestyle. It also deepened the unease in the nation still reeling from a recent slaughter wrought by gunmen who attacked a Texas school, a New York grocery store, and another church in California. Why would a guy who's been around for a while suddenly decide he would go to a supper and kill somebody? The Reverend Doug Carpenter, St. Stephen's pastor for 3 decades before he retired in 2005. It doesn't make sense, which is what I was saying. It does not make sense. All 3 shooting victims were members attending a monthly dinner at the church, and Carpenter, who still attends Sunday services there but wasn't present Thursday night, a Facebook post referred to the gathering as a boomer's potluck. Carpenter said one victim's wife and other witnesses recounted what had happened. They said a man who introduced himself only as Mr. Smith sat at the table by himself, as he had done while visiting a previous church dinner. People tried to speak to him, and he was kind of distant and very much a loner, Carpenter told the Associated Press by telephone. At Thursday's dinner, church member Walter Bartlett Rainey invited the visitor to join his table, Carpenter said, but the man declined. He said Rainey's wife noticed the visitor wasn't eating. Linda Rainey said he didn't have any food and she offered to fix a plate for him, and he turned that down, said Carpenter. Soon afterward, Carpenter said, the man drew his gun and opened fire, shooting Walter Rainey and 2 other church members. Carpenter said another member, a man in his 70s, grabbed a chair and charged the gunman. He hit him with the folding chair, wrestling him to the ground, took the gun from him, and hit him in the head with his own gun. That's exactly what he did. Church members held the suspect until police arrived. Police Captain Shane Ware said, a police mugshot showed Smith with a blackened left eye and cuts to his nose and forehead. The person that subdued the suspect, in my opinion, was a hero, Ware told the news conference Friday, saying the act was extremely critical in saving lives. Rainey, 84, died at the scene. His wife of 6 decades wasn't harmed. We are all grateful that she was spared and that he died in her arms while she murmured words of comfort and love into his ears. Police said Sarah Yeager, 75, of Pelham, died soon afterward at a hospital. An 84-year-old woman died Friday. Police did release her name, citing the family's request for privacy. Ware said Smith and the three victims were all white. He said the police are investigating. I hate that they feel the need to have to tell us something like that, that all three victims were white, because of the way that the world is today. He said police are investigating what motivated the suspect who occasionally attended services at the church. Authorities executed a search warrant Friday at Smith's home, less than 3 miles, 5 kilometers away. Records from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives show Smith is a licensed gun dealer whose business is listed at his home address. Court records show Smith filed a lawsuit in 2008 against Samford University, a private university in Metro Birmingham, alleging campus security wrongly detained him, accused him of impersonating a police officer. Vestavia Hills Mayor Ashley Curry told the reporters his close-knit, resilient, loving community was rocked by this senseless act of violence. It's home to nearly 40,000 residents, most of them white, including many business people, doctors, and lawyers who work in Birmingham. The church's pastor, Reverend John Burris, said on Facebook post that he was in Greece on a pilgrimage and trying to get back. The Reverend Rebecca Bridges, the associated pastor, led an online prayer service on the church's Facebook page Friday morning. She prayed not only for the victims and church members who witnessed the shooting, but also for the person who perpetrated the shooting. We pray that you will work in that person's heart, Bridges said, and we pray that you will help us to forgive. Bridges, currently in London, alluded to other recent mass shootings as she prayed that our culture will change and that our laws will change in ways that will protect all of us. Thursday's shooting happened just over a month after one person was killed and 5 injured when a man opened fire in a Taiwanese parishioners at a Southern California church. It also came nearly 7 years to the day after an avowed white supremacist killed 9 people during Bible study at Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina. A message posted by St. Stephen's said it would hold Sunday services, adding, "We will gather at the table that has taught so many that love is always breaking through in this world, no matter what we experience, whether it be doubt, anger, loss, grief, or death, but yet also joy and life." So you see what I was saying? Like, it really doesn't make sense that he would shoot them. I mean, he had issues with other people. Like, he filed a lawsuit against the university because he felt like he was wrongly detained. So it would have made more sense if he was shooting cops or shooting up the school campus or at a courthouse because he felt like the courts didn't handle the case right. You see what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make sense that he went to this church and decided to shoot people. Like, where does that even fit in? What role do they even play in your delusions? Like, it doesn't. It just. But I ain't gonna lie. I'm glad to see that he got a little banged up, a few dents, a few scrapes in the paint on the way to the county. Because some stuff you just don't do, and that's one of them. You just go to the church and kill old people who just trying to enjoy life and inviting you, welcoming you in to just enjoy this time with them, and you decide to kill them. He should have got banged up a little more. So, finally, we come to, and I don't know what to call this particular criminal. Is he a dumb criminal? Is he a smart criminal? Was he trying to be slick? Is he truly reformed and trying to do the right thing? Says Benny Deonda Jr. wins retrial by claiming his sentence is too short. So, the title tells me that he is apparently already incarcerated, having gone to trial on a matter and been sentenced. And he wanted a retrial, and for the grounds to get a retrial, he used the fact that He considers his sentence to be too short. Here's the thing. He feels like his sentence is too short. What if they acquit him at his retrial? Well, anyway, it says when you lose a hand at poker, you might wager double or nothing to win back what you've lost. But first-degree murder convictions are more often one and done. Yet after accepting a guilty plea in 2001, an Illinois man has won a retrial on the basis that the 30-year sentence he is currently serving is not harsh enough. That doesn't make sense. If he accepted a guilty plea, that's not a trial to begin with. That's like a plea bargain. You plead guilty and you get sentenced. So what's to retry? But okay, it could just be a mix-up in wording. My client's plea is void because it was never legally allowed. Illinois' Office of the State Appellate Defender Levi Harris told the Huffington Post. Harris represents 26-year-old Benny Deonda Jr., who, after serving 10 years in prison, will again go to trial for the 2001 murder of Mario Jimenez, following the discovery that the plea deal he accepted is against state law. Typically, a convicted murderer in Illinois faces between 20 and 60 years in prison, with a 15-year enhancement in cases involving a firearm, Harris explains. That means that Deonda should have received a minimum 35-year deal, plus the plea deal he accepted is void, and thus the plea deal he accepted is void. Okay, that makes sense. 25 plus 15 is 35, which would be the minimum. The Supreme Court recognized that the state has the authority to enter plea agreements on charges of its choosing. However, a trial court does not have the authority to accept a negotiated guilty plea below the mandatory minimum sentence of 35 years imprisonment for first-degree murder with the use of a firearm. Harris discovered the error 8 years after Deonda began his sentencing only because a dismissed post-conviction petition renewed focus on the case. It's a situation where the plea itself is illegal, so he basically gets to start from scratch through no fault of his own. Oh, I see what they're doing. Now Deonda will have a second chance to present the self-defense argument his attorneys say he was persuaded to forego nearly 10 years ago. Ah, now it makes sense. He's not actually trying to say, give me more time because you didn't give me enough time. He's actually trying to say, give me a trial that you forced me out of 10 years ago. Now it makes sense. So I'm going to have to scratch him off the dumb criminals list and scratch him off and pencil him in on the smart guy list, because it would have took some looking to find that. People tend to think that if someone has pleaded guilty, they must be guilty. But if you're staring at life in prison and you're offered 30 years, you might take the deal. Of course, Deonda hopes that by risking a minimum 5 additional years behind bars, the retrial will ultimately yield less prison time. I knew it. Perhaps by downgrading the charges upon which he is convicted to involuntary manslaughter. But it's also possible, if not likely, that a retrial will lead to a harsher sentence, which would keep Deonda in prison until he's 80 years old or even for life. However, Chicago-based criminal defense lawyer Joel Brodsky says the decision to seek a retrial must be a calculated one. You think the defense discovered some substantial weakness that they had not known before. And why was the state fighting so hard to keep the 30 years? Something came up after the plea that made him want a retrial. Yeah, why would the state try to enforce an illegal plea that's less time than what he should have gotten? Somebody messed up somewhere, and they know they messed up, and they don't want it to come out. Winning that retrial didn't come easy, though. Harris only managed to convince the court by using the precedent-setting Illinois Supreme Court case, People versus Pierre White, which established that any plea bargain set by a trial court not accounting for sentencing enhancements, in this case, possession of a firearm, will be void. At first glance, the seemingly illogical move of pointing out a too lenient sentence comes off as the discovery of a loophole or a technicality. But based on this precedent, as both Harris and Brodsky agree, the circumstance is simply an illegal plea. The state can ask why didn't he bring it up years ago, but when it's void, it doesn't matter. He's right about that. So, a decade after closing the books, prosecutors will be forced to rebuild a story they thought had been laid to rest. It's much harder to try a case 10 years later, explained Steve Crone, a California based criminal defense attorney. The prosecution may be thinking they're going to have a tough time now as they go back and start from scratch to recreate the case. Yeah, because witnesses have moved, people have probably died, evidence has probably been destroyed, thinking, okay, this is over, we don't need to keep this anymore, or released to its owners. As with Brodsky, the question of why now is one that immediately came to Crone's mind. It makes you wonder whether the defendant found new evidence or if a witness is no longer available. Yep. New evidence or desires to argue self-defense. Crone and Brodsky agree that DeAnda is rolling the dice by reopening his case. He really is. Talk about playing Russian roulette, though. He's doing it. Crone said DeAnda was facing almost a life sentence. So maybe from his perspective, why not take the gamble? DeAnda's attorney thinks he has an idea why. If you are an innocent man, 30 years for innocence is not a good deal, Harris said. It's a hell of a bad deal. You're right about that. I don't know. What do you guys think? Dumb criminal? Smart guy? Trying to be slick? Truly reformed? What do you think? I don't even know what to make out of this one. So I'm going to leave it up to whoever is watching this. Comment in the comment section. Where do you think I should put him? Is he a dumb criminal or not? So I guess that's it. I'm going to get out of here. I might come on here tomorrow for something. I'm not really sure, but I will definitely be here Saturday. And Tammy Crimes, if you do happen to watch this, I have a special one-on-one live set up for you. Since you could not make it to the Channel Angels live, or since the times got all messed up on that. And Chris, you know who you are. Same for you if you'll just get in touch. Well, good night, guys. I'm out of here.